Good evening, everyone. I'm Neha, Ambassador of Change for GETI, that is Global Education and Training Institute, founded and conceptualized by Dr. Sunita Gandhi with the vision of disrupting the education movement as we know it. And we do this by organizing pre-service and in-service training for teachers so that they can spearhead this disruptive education movement. And alongside, we also organize deep talks where we invite educators, policymakers, and various researchers from around the education fraternity to discuss various best practices in education with us. And today I'm very honored and thrilled to have with us Ms. Herdiana Devi, who is an entrepreneur, a life coach, a mental health advocate based at this education center in Jakarta, in Indonesia. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Hello, hi everyone. Okay, so can I
Well,
start right now?
thank you, ma'am. Ma'am will be condensing her experience and will be talking about social emotional skills and the role it plays in, fostering a healthy school environment. A topic that's very close to my heart, and I am looking forward to seeing ma'am's thoughts and experience and expertise on it. I will now be putting ma'am's presentation so that she can take us through this topic. Then,
Oh,
you're present.
okay. Thank you so much, Miss Nana. Okay, good evening for all people who are watching us right now. My name is Herjana Dinafika from Indonesia. I'm an entrepreneur, certified anti-practitioner, life coach, meditation teacher, and mental health advocate. I'm so grateful to be a speaker at the Talk, and thank you so much, Global Education and Training Institute, for this opportunity. And thanks a lot, Miss Neha, for amazing introduction. So our topic today is social emotional skills and a healthy school environment. Well, no matter how far we've come as a society, there's always something new to learn. We have thought that it's important to know how to read and write, but we soon realized that there's also a need for us as a society to learn how not to be prejudiced, how not to discriminate, and many more. But what if our children? Do they know how to process such information? Do they know how to process their emotions? Are they equipped with all the tools they need in order to deal with social and emotional issues of tomorrow? The answer is probably no. They are not prepared, and this is a serious issue that we must address immediately. You have probably heard that kids these days are not getting enough exercise. They are spending too much time in front of the screens and not enough time outside for playing with friends or getting some simply fresh air or sunlight. But there's another problem with today's youth. They are not spending enough time for thinking. Because we live in a world where speed and efficiency are valued over contemplation and critical thought. So our brains are being conditioned to respond to stimuli much more than they think independently. We can see this in the way kids communicate with each other through texting instead of conversation, memes instead of original content, and emojis instead of facial expressions. And we can see this in the way kids learn. They learn through rote memorization rather than critical thinking and from textbook also instead of picture. Even in the classroom, students spend more time taking notes on their devices than they do interacting with material being taught by the teacher. Kids have become more accustomed to passively absorbing information than they have to actively comprehending it, which is why so many of them struggle to spot the facts at a whim but cannot apply those facts into a real life or real scenario in their life. Whenever I discuss the subject of shaping the mind to prepare for the future, I often get questioned whether it is possible to shape the mind so it prepares for the next future generations. It's a good question, and the answer, of course, is yes. And when we use this term in regards to education and training, we mean developing social emotional skills. So, what
Uh,
are social emotional
so,
skills?
I'm so sorry to disturb you. Are you on the first slide still? I can just see the
Yes,
first
yes,
slide.
yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Still,
I'm so sorry to
okay,
disturb you. It's okay.
okay. So, So, what are social emotional skills? Do they include academic learning? How does this all relate to shaping the mind? Let's get started, and I wanna share my screen right now. Okay, so our topics for today are going to cover five points. The first is introduction for the social emotional skill itself, and the second is benefits of a healthy school environment. The third is social emotional skills influence our lives, and the fourth is improve social emotional skills. And the last one is support your child's development and growth. So, what is social emotional skills? Social emotional skills are the essential skills that help us to interact with others and form relationships. They include self-regulation, empathy, and the ability to read social cues. Okay, the first, self-regulation. It is the ability to control your own emotions and behaviors. This includes impulse control and managing stress. Self-regulation is also important because it helps children learn how to manage their feelings and impulses, which will later help them deal with disappointments and frustration in life. That is why it's really important to teach social emotional skills. Because with the self-regulation, it can help the children control themselves and also help the teacher reach the standard from the school and also get really great grade. And the second one is empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand how someone else feels by putting yourself in their shoes. Empathy helps people identify what another person may be thinking or feeling based on facial expression, gestures, tone of voice, and more. It's important for children to develop this skill early because it helps them interact better with others by understanding what they are feeling without having to ask them directly. In a real life, there are so many children, even adults, who don't have good enough empathy, and they end up with being arrogant and also selfish. It's really, really not be beneficial for students, especially when they try to grow up, because it might affect some relations with another people. The last one is social cues. It is the kind of signals that people use when talking with another so that everyone understands what is being said or asked for. The social cues include facial expression like smiling or frowning. So we have to teach the children or the young generation about the social cues so they can understand there will be time for another people, for another children where they don't want to speak, but maybe they are in the condition that are not really, really well, or maybe they are not in a condition that they want to ask for help, but actually they need help. With the social emotional skills and with the implementation of social cues, another children with a great social emotional skills can realize that something happened with their friends, for example. So without asking them, they can offer some help or offer some empathy for them. The next benefit of a healthy school environment. The first benefit is, of course, for social and emotional well-being. Students with more positive relationships, effective coping skills, and a sense of belonging at school are less likely to engage in risky behaviors such as substance use, violence, and other inappropriate acts. Because they feel they belong to the school, they also have a great absent or they also have tried their best to attend their schools and they don't want to absent or maybe skip or some special subject that they think that is not really important for them. That's why it's really, really great to build a healthy school environment. The second is academic performance. Students who feel accepted and connected at the school perform better academically. They experience fewer disciplinary problems, have fewer absence, and spend more time on tasks than those who don't feel supported by their teachers or peers. Because when a student feel that they're not comfortable at the school, they will tend to absent or they will try to avoid the tasks that given by the teacher or they try to hide themselves from their friends. That's why it's really important to keep a healthy school environment. The next is positive attitudes about school. Students who feel connected to their teacher and peers are less likely to drop out of school or skip classes. They have higher self-esteem and increased motivation to learn new things. If a school make a healthy environment, then of course the students, even also the teacher, can have a great motivation to keep learning new things every day, and they come to the school with excitement. They tend to really, really show their excitement rather than when they are not feeling really good about the school. Because when they have a good feeling about a class, for example, about a specific subject or about a specific teacher, then they can get more excitement than the average or maybe than the students who don't really have any important things in the mind about the school. Like they don't have sense of belonging to the school. The next is of course improved mental health. Students who feel connected at school are less likely to experience mental health problems such as depression or anxiety. They are also less likely to engage in risky behaviors like using drugs or alcohol. If the students feel that they are not belonging to the school or they feel like their friends or their teachers are not supportive enough or maybe they make them feel that they're not supposed to be here, then of course the students may experience social anxiety, stress, or even depression. And with that effect, it will for sure affect their grade at the school. It will give negative impact for the academic result at the end. So school are the first place that children experience the world. They learn to navigate new places, make friends, and even have their first experiences with unwanted things. In today's society, there are many factors that can negatively impact a child's school experience. Some of these factors include bullying, academic rigor, inadequate staffing, lack of facilities and equipment. I think in almost all countries, we all have experience about bullying. Maybe we are not the victim directly, maybe we have witnessed the bullying, or maybe we have a close friend who is become the victim of it. It's really important that bullying can really give a negative impacts for the children, not only for the childhood, but it can have a long-term effect for the children. They may face trauma, they may have anxiety, and they might tend to be a person who don't want to be around another people or anti-society. So we have to make sure that we make a healthy environment at the school and we have to maintain the students' behaviors as well. That's why it's really important to teach the children or the students about social emotional skills because if we have a good set of social emotional skills, for example, self-regulation, and empathy. Of course, we're not going to do bullying to another students or bullying for another people outside of school because when we have a great skill of self-regulation, we can control our emotions. We can control our impulsive. We may not get angry easily when someone maybe says something that we don't want to hear. That's why it's really important to teach social emotional skills at school. Next is academic rigor. Maybe the students face the bullying from another students, but Maybe we also not realize that academic rigor also can give a negative impact for children. For example, the teachers being super strict and they tend to give a disruptive punishment for the children maybe who don't meet the standard of the school. It can of course be a bad experience for the students and it may leave some traumatic experience for the student. The next is inadequate staffing. If we try to recall our memories when we were in the school, or maybe we have seen the news and the TV, we may have heard so many times that some of places maybe don't have competent teachers who bring something negatively at the school environment. Like I don't want to say that there will be change for teachers who are not competent enough for teaching, but the fact in the real world is some teachers are trying to avoid their responsibility. They tend to come to the class and greet the students and just give them the assignment, but they don't realize that the teaching is not only give the assignment, give them the score, and then greet, and then yeah, just say goodbye to the teachers. There are some standards, as we know, for the educators that we have to meet as teachers. The last is lack of facilities and equipment. Maybe we can realize that the lack of facilities can also impact the child's school experience. For example, the students A maybe have a better school. Let's say they have a full facilities at the school, and then the students B don't have enough good facilities. And when they meet up, when they try to hang out together, they share to say, "Oh, my school has this, my school has this." Then they might feel like, oh, why I don't have this thing in my school? Why I don't have this thing? Why there's something like that in their school? Why there is no something like this in my school? Then they try to compare. And when they try to compare, maybe they cannot control their impulses. Maybe they cannot control their emotions. That's why it's really important to make sure that we have a good enough facilities and equipment. But in some areas, maybe it's not easy to provide all the facilities that actually the children need. If we don't have a standard for the facilities and equipment due to some of the reasons, maybe the places or maybe another circumstances, we also still have to encourage our children or our students that there's some conditions that happen so they can understand that's why it's really important to teach social emotional skills so they can understand those things as long as we can communicate with them in a perfectly well. So social emotional skills are factors in determining how we live our lives because they impact how well we handle relationships with friends, family, coworkers, and even romantic partners in the future. Research from the National Institute of Mental Health shows that teens who suffer from emotional problems are also at risk for having physical health problems like asthma and headaches. And teens who struggle to control their emotions are more likely to have poor grades, do poorly on standardized tests, and drop out of school entirely. So it's not surprised if we try to reconnect with the person who don't have enough good connection with another people if they tend to drop out of school. Because yeah, they don't have sense of belonging to the school. That's why it's really important to engage the student that they are belong to the school and we also need them here. We also have to build a warm environment so they can feel safe, they can feel comfortable at the school. So it's not only a place for teaching, but we also have to make them comfort like the second home because realize it or not, some school, for example, spend their time from morning to afternoon. Maybe they spend more time at the school instead of the home. So we have to make sure that they are not fully in stress condition. So the importance of social emotional skills in our lives are a crucial part of our development as humans. We learn these skills within infancy and adulthood, but the seeds are planted in childhood. At the age of 3, children have the ability to express their feelings and understand others' feelings. And by 5, they have the ability to resolve conflicts by themselves with others. These skills continue to develop throughout adolescence and into adulthood. So some people may see this is such a thing that it's actually for adults because children is not necessary to understand this because they are still child. Maybe once they get older, they can understand it by themselves. I have ever heard like that before, but it's totally wrong because as someone who's older, we can take part for it, whether we are the teachers, whether they're the parents, or whether they're someone who have the responsibility to teach about the good things for the humans. It's important to maintain the social emotional skills since the childhood because if we try to implement such a skill since the childhood, it will be more easier for us to shape their minds later in the future so we don't face the difficulties for them as well. And by adulthood, social emotional skills can no longer be regarded as something that's purely personal. They start to influence other aspects of our lives. For example, someone with well-developed coping mechanism is likely to get stressed out when a deadline is approaching or when there's a lot going on at work. This person is also more likely to be equipped with the tools needed to handle the situation if they do get stressed out. As opposed to someone who doesn't have this tool, this person may become depressed or anxious when something stressful happens. So we also have to realize that life is not always perfectly well. There might be some bad days. It happens to all people. Like there is no perfect life actually, but we can maintain how we react, how we try to face what happened in front of us. And with social emotional skills, we can try to bounce back again, even if something bad happened. And even if there's so much work to do or so much excitement to do, we can try to manage our brains, which one is an urgent, which one is more important at this time. So we don't stress out ourselves. And even if it stress out ourselves, we know when we can bounce back again and try to get started again. But if we don't have social emotional skill, we don't have self-regulation in ourselves, then we can feel that it's really stressful and we tend to blame ourselves and the situation why it's happening for us. That's why it's really great to children to learn self-regulation since the early age. Okay, in addition, it's been proven that happier people tend to do better at work than their unhappy counterparts. Happy people can be more successful in negotiation, build strong relationships with colleagues and clients, and gain more recognition for their efforts than unhappy people. Because yeah, if we don't have kind of happy feelings, how can we want to explore something new? But if we have a good feelings, we have a good excitement every morning when we just woke up. Yeah, we are ready to face something new. We are ready to learn something new as well. But if we are not happy with ourselves, then when we just wake up, I feel like why we have to do this again, why this is such a broad things that we need to face. Same like students, if they have a good social emotional skills, they might not feel something like, oh, I don't want to go to school this morning because it's such a bored day. And the other words, they feel like, oh, really, I'm going to learn something new at the school, so I'm super excited to go to school because I want to meet my friends, I want to meet my teachers, and yeah, it's really happy feeling that can bring excitement and great action with a great result after that. And according to the National Association of School Psychologists, the most effective academic programs for improving student achievement and school success are those that provide children with social, emotional, and cognitive competence. And ASB also states that children who have good social behavior skills are less likely to exhibit disruptive or inappropriate behaviors when faced with academic challenge or personal setback. And the NASB suggests that schools should focus on developing social emotional skills because it's beneficial to students' academic performance and overall development. So how we can improve social emotional skills? The first step toward better understanding yourself is recognizing that you are more complex than you think you are. In our efforts to create easy to understand narrative for ourselves, we often overlook the motivations behind our actions. Some things we do are automatic, but many are based on logical assumptions about how people will react to us, which often don't hold up in the real world. That's why sometimes we feel like, oh, this person is doing this specific things because of A, B, C, D reason, but actually it's just our logical assumptions. It's not in the real world, it's not a truth. That's why it's really important for us to recognize that this life is not only A and B, this life is not only black and white. There are so many colorful things that we can cover in this world. For example, many of us can remember a time when we were embarrassed or uncomfortable in social situations that ask ourselves questions like, why was I wearing that? Or why did I say that? When really it's because we didn't take account of the person being driven by fear or insecurity, something that was outside of our own perspective on the situation. The next step is understanding that you are not alone. You may feel as though your personality is completely unique, but there are so many commonalities among people. So we have to remind the youth, we have to remind the children that they are not alone. Maybe some children might feel, oh, I'm not good at math, oh, I'm not good at biology, or oh, I'm not good with this subject. The teacher has to encourage the students that they are not alone because we all here for learning. That's why we go to school, right? That's why we tend to pay attention for the subject. So we have to remember that encouraging the students and remind them that they are not alone, it's really helpful for the students to overcome what kind of difficulties that they face at the school. Okay, next, support your child's development and growth. How do you shape the mind for the next generation? It's simple. Teach your kids to be happy and healthy. And here are three ways to start now. First, teach them your values. Second, encourage their interests. And the third one is set a good example. Teach them your values. Remember that happy and healthy is not just about nutrition and exercise. It's also about personal values. Make sure they know what is important to you and why those things are important. It will help them make decisions in the future. So if we want the students for doing specific things or special things that they have never tried before, we have to remind them what's the core value behind this action, why they have to do this, what kind of beneficial things, what kind of disadvantage if they don't do it. We cannot expect them to do what we taught them to do without explaining the history behind it, because it's really important to teach the values behind every actions. Second, encourage their interests. Let them discover their passions. If they are constantly being told what to like or how to act, they will think outside of the box less often. By being open to new things, they will learn to appreciate variety, which will help them be happier in the long term. Like if we put them in a specific box for long term, they absolutely going to get bored and they cannot explore, they cannot discover another world that actually maybe they are more passionate about. So we have to let them discover and do what they want to do, but we also have to maintain and also still monitor what kind of the things that they are doing. Third, set a good example. If you cannot say it, don't expect them to listen. Because students or children, they are watching everything you do, good or bad. So set a positive example by eating well and exercising. So you can be a role model for them. Be the change you want to see in the world. Like, for example, the teachers want the students to be quiet at the class, but they actually don't see in the teacher itself how to be quiet with themselves because maybe the teacher tends to get mad easily. Maybe the teacher don't have enough good self-regulation, like they get mad over small things that actually they can avoid by seeing the teacher doing some stuff. So don't expect the students being calm if the teacher itself such an angry teacher. So we have to be a good role model for them. Okay, there are three ways to support child development and growth. If you're a parent or teacher, chances are you're already supporting your child's development and growth in one way or another. Whether you want to admit it or not, we all have our own methods of helping our kids learn and grow. The question is it working? Here are three ways to support. First, giving the right types of feedback. Praising their accomplishments, encourage them to be better when they do not pass, instead of getting mad, develop critical thinking about their results. We also have to be a supportive teachers or supportive parents by giving the right types of feedback. We don't let the students or the children just okay, we got the A plus, you got the B plus, and they just put the paper on the table and then just leave them alone. It's not good. We have to give the right feedback in whatever or in whether it is bad or good grade that they got. We also still have to give them a right feedbacks or positive feedbacks. The second is being a good role model. Be a good role model for your child. Greet people with a smile and treat everyone with respect. Show them how to behave well. If we don't become a good role model, we cannot expect the children to become nice or being kind to another if we as teachers or as parents simply pass by another person when we met them, even though we know who is that person. It's a little thing, but actually it develops a social emotional skills. We have to teach the kids or the children that it's important to greet people, smile by walking, and also maybe we can stop for a while and talk to them a little bit instead of just chin up and walk away and pass by that other person. The last one is providing effective discipline. Guide them to take responsibility for their actions when they make mistakes, and showing them how to act appropriately towards others when they need guidance. It's really important to teach the young generation how to take responsibility over their actions because many things happen in this world that have shaped their minds, maybe because they spend too much time on the internet and they don't realize that they don't have responsibility in their action. Maybe they spend time too much playing games and then they get that grade, for example, at the school. We have to teach them or discipline them and learn how to take responsibility over the action because whatever kind of the action that you do, you will have find the consequences later. And the consequences is not always negative. It can be positive and it can be negative. That's why it's important for us to address the values about kind of actions that they might do. So the conclusion is social emotional skills begin developing at age 2 or 3 when the child begins to recognize emotion in herself and others. This is when it's most important that you talk about emotions with her or him. And at age 5 or 6, children start to develop empathy, share their feelings, and become more aware of their own strength and weakness. It's important for parents or teachers to continue having open communication about emotions and continue building on their child's social emotional development. And at this point, by helping them learn how to manage their emotions, make friends, and express themselves appropriately. Okay, thank you so much. I think that's all enough that I can share for right now for shaping the minds for better generation.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that very informative, light, and such a presentation that I think all my viewers who are watching and people who will eventually watch will definitely have some takeaways from it. But before we wrap, I have a question for you. Since we're a teacher training institute, my main question is how do you plan to, or what are your thoughts on basically equipping the teachers so that, they are better able to, exert these social emotional skills and prepare students, inculcate social emotional skills in students basically?
Uh, I'm sorry, can you repeat the questions because I cannot hear your voice clearly?
Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I'm so sorry. My question is, since we are teacher training institute, what is your advice, for teachers to inculcate the values of social emotional skills so that they can, pass on those skills or maybe, lead by example. How can teachers model social emotional skills in the classroom, for their students so that their students are better equipped to, imbibe those social emotional skills, basically.
Okay, for example, when the teacher starts enter the class, they can start smiling to the students. So when the teachers come to the class with smiling, with the good vibes, and for sure it will affect the environment or the circumstances or the atmosphere at the class. And it's really important to teacher to pay attention for the small things like this because realize it or not, when the teacher comes with straight face and then students are getting scared, they don't want to, oh my god, this news, or oh my god, this news, or I cannot wait to finish this subject. So it's a simple way for teachers to start developing social emotion skills and being a good role model. For example, like I have said that we can try to smile when we begin the class and greet the students when we meet them on the street, for example, even out of school. Just because we are teachers, for example, doesn't mean that we don't have to greet the student first. How about if we say the student first and they don't see? Maybe if we are being arrogant, we don't want to greet them, even though we, oh, this is my student. So it's important to bring the good role itself in the teacher before we start to teach the children or the students. And after that, after we come to small things, and we can also have to maintain such a rule that we can stay for the students at the school. We have to tell out why we are teaching you this specific thing, or maybe there are kind of strict teachers for sure in the school, and they have to explain the values, why they are behaving like this, why they want the student to achieve specific goals or specific grades, what kind of the benefit. We don't have to realize, or maybe some teacher, oh, you have to pass this this exam with this past paper, but they actually don't know why. Maybe they only have to know the reason because I have to pass this so I can continue the next grade with a great grade. But we also have to make sure that we need to address to them their value about their action because if we teach the students since an early age about the consequences of every action, it can really develop a critical thinking for the students as well.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for taking that question. And thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and your expertise on this topic. Really glad to have you over here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay, thank you so much, Miss Naya. Nice to see you here.
Thank you, ma'am. Hope to see you again.
Okay, bye.